Good evening. Welcome to Right Talk with Mike Lee. This evening, my guest, who I'm really honored to have as a guest, privileged and really flattered, actually, is a friend of mine. His name is Gary Teal. Gary is executive director of the Travis County Republican Party, and I consider him a friend and a partner in crime because we both have lived and worked in the People's Republic of Travis County of Austin. And we are indeed kind of like refugees here. And we are sort of like not wanted people, but we're not wanted. Let me put by most of county is about 40 maybe.
I think it's worse than that.
I think Hillary carried this county like about 80 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's the number I would look at. It's not even Republican, Democrat, Independent. It's who did you vote for president. That tells you a lot. Whatever it was in 2008, 2012, 2016.
And one of the old thoughts that I've had is small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, great minds talk about ideas.
True.
With that in mind, I generally like to kick some things around with Gary about conservative versus liberal ideas, what they are, and I would like for Gary to tell my audience a little bit more about himself. And then I may learn something. I just learned chatting before the show that I didn't know he had been in Afghanistan. You're from Washington, D.C., right here?
No, I'm from Abilene.
You're from Abilene?
I'm a Texan. I went to Abilene Cooper, and then I went to TCU, and then I worked for Ross Perot before he ran for president. He was a brilliant businessman. He was a billionaire, and he was like 7 layers up from me on the org chart. But while I was at EDS, I went to D.C. a couple of times, and I had been there for very brief visits, and I sort of was interested in politics. So I thought, well, I'm going to be in town for 6 weeks. I'm just going to see everything I want to see. Mm-hmm. 6 weeks later, I hadn't seen the Pentagon. I hadn't seen the Holocaust Museum. I went back a second time on business from Dallas, where I was. This is a Texas audience. I have to say Dallas if I'm on the East Coast. I can say Mesquite or Grand Prairie when I'm here. But Garland is where I was living.
You were in Garland?
I was living in Garland, and I got a job offer in D.C., and so I left EDS at that point. So that's part of the story. Afghanistan, I was civilian and absolutely nothing, courageous or.
Now you weren't in the military, that's correct?
I've never served. My father was on Okinawa during a pretty bad time, and I just didn't do that. I don't feel good about that, but I guess it's a luxury that I had that my father helped pay for it. And he wasn't injured or killed, but he could have been.
I don't have military experience either, and it's one of the regrets I kind of have in life. But when I was in high school and college and things like that, I didn't even know people in the military got paid. Now, all of my brothers, most of my brothers have military experience. But when I was coming out of high school, I was like on a mission. My dream was to become a lawyer by the time I'm 25, which is a crazy thought to have when you're just 8. Coming where I'm from.
It's okay.
But
it helped you. It helped you get there.
Yeah, but when you're 8 years old, you're talking about holding on for 17 years at age 8. That's not normal.
Well, I hope you also had some fun with riding your bike.
Well, I had a little fun, just not a lot though. And that's one of the things when I assess myself personally, I didn't have like just unbridled fun. It was school and education was always in the back of my mind.
I have a friend who I knew pretty well because I was in the marching band. I played clarinet. All the guys who played trumpet and cornet, they said, you're playing a girl's instrument. I said, I'll be okay. I'll sit over here with the girls, and you guys can hang out together. I'll be okay over here. But in between us was the oboe player. And we had an oboe player, and he's very quiet, very short guy. He never did anything. Like when the school bell rang, he went home and he practiced the oboe. That's all he did. But he became the principal oboe of the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra, arguably the most demanding oboe playing job in the world. So sometimes when you got focus as a kid, you miss stuff, and then it pays off.
Well, the other thing, Gary, that you and I have in common, other than being conservative, is at least I like to say, lightly say, that I was hoodwinked by James Dickey, who's the RPT chair.
Inspired.
No, when I first started frequenting and attending the EC Executive Committee meetings, all I wanted to be was a precinct chair. And James sent me an email. He said, "Yeah, I know that's what you want to be, but I kind of have something that I have a different idea." He said, and he says to me, and I want to ask him about this one day. He says, "You just seem like the kind of guy that likes a challenge." And there was a guy named Vic Vad. I think Vic was doing outreach then. He says, "I'd like for you to try that." Okay, all right. You know, I'm kind of crazy. But especially here in Travis County. And James and he was a Travis County chair at that time. And I used to just do volunteer work for the party. I did volunteer work for the party in Houston also, in Harris County, some years back. But James and I, in the process of trying to make the Travis County Republican Party more relevant here, we used to do some interesting things like go to the Victory Grill for certain meetings, went to NAACP banquet or something like that.
Show up.
And we also went to, and one thing James said to me, he said, sometimes people don't know that you care until you show that you care. And what you said about showing up, that's something that Pokey says a lot. And because down here in Travis County, it's almost like we were intimidated. You had Republicans in the closet. Not because they were gay.
Still do.
But because they were Republicans.
Right. They can't even be honest with their friends because they're afraid somebody's going to bite their head off. And I would like to think that we don't treat liberals that way. I'm sure that there are places where someone says, "Yeah, I'm a real liberal and I admire Fidel Castro." They have a hard time at dinner that night. But I hope that we don't make people feel that we have no respect for them at all. And that really is one of the things that we'll probably end up talking about tonight. I know some liberals. They are not stupid. They're just not stupid people. And they're not evil people. And they went to good schools in a lot of cases. I think they're wrong, but I don't think they're bad. And I end up having to say this a lot because I believe that the liberals have succeeded in many of their arguments with young people, especially because these are very appealing arguments to a young person. They say, if you vote Republican, you're evil. You're a bad person.
You're a racist, you're a misogynist, they name call. And I think they call names because their arguments and ideas really don't work. And it's been shown that they don't work.
And you can talk to almost any 27-year-old and say, hey, $20 trillion in debt. I'll be dead. You're paying it off. They know that we've done too much deficit spending. They don't want the federal government to come into their home or their community. They know that government works better when it's local. They also understand that most of them like to be left alone and to live their own lives and all that. So you could pretty much make a bunch of progress with a lot of young Democrats by just saying, government's too big. And they'll say, yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. But you hate people. You hate women. You got a war on women.
Well, not that has any truth to it, these various accusations that are made about conservatives.
They work.
But they work, they frighten, and I think in large part, Gary, they work because as conservatives, we say nothing back. And so all they hear is what liberals say about conservatives. They don't even hear what conservatives say about themselves, which gets me to a point that's very important to me. This show was really started while James was a TCRP chair. And he supported us. He gave us all the support that we needed. And when the election was held, when the primary was held, I think it was 2 years ago when Robert Morrow won.
Right.
After Morrow won, one of the first calls I made was to call James, just check on him, because we just talked like that. And I told him, because we talk as brothers in many ways. I say, James, you know, they say that all things work for good to those who love the Lord. I say, but James, I don't see the good in this right now. But it's going to be some good. I have to believe there's going to be some good come out of it somewhere.
Well,
but I think it's one of the good things that turned out for the party, because it made some people get involved. It's caused some people to get alarmed. And one of the things that we did in outreach specifically was on Pokey's show, Trailer Park Show, which is where I started. I was working with Pokey for about a year before I started my own show as a backup for him. On Pokey's show, I said, let's get Morrow on to talk. And there were I would dare say that most people on the executive committee, most Republicans in Travis County didn't want us to do that. But, you know.
It was dangerous.
But I told Pokey, I say, Pokey, that's what's one thing that's wrong with Republicans and conservatives. We want to run too much and hide and just hope something goes away. I said, let's just face this thing. And so we had him on the show. He came on the Trailer Park Show and basically said he wasn't going to do a damn thing. And that there was a portion of the show that was shown as a clip at an EC meeting, and that's when a lot of the change began to happen. And when that change began to happen, and then Morrow, I'll probably give him on this show at some point, but he ran for president. And when he threw his hat in the ring for president, he became disqualified as chair.
Right.
And then we had some other machinations go on, but eventually James was made chair again. And then I think there was something with James, and then who was it? Dave Duncan? Is it Dave?
He was the executive vice chair. And then he wanted to be the chair, and he didn't become chair. I saw all that from afar. I wasn't here.
You weren't here at the time.
I wasn't here. This is all the 2016 cycle.
Right.
I met James at the Republican convention in Cleveland, and just really got along with him really well. Really clear to me that this was a guy who gets it. And so anyway, I was still living in Washington, and I had met a small number of people. Some of them were prominent people. Robin Armstrong, you know, he goes to RNC meetings, and I would go to RNC meetings, and I had met Meckler and Steve Ministeri and other people like that. There were a couple of people who I'd met, and so I was hearing from them. I know that Brendan Steinhauser ran, and he is going to do well in this life, obviously. A young man with a lot of potential, and married someone who's equally capable.
Right.
And now they've got 3 little bitty children, and so
3?
They're outnumbered. That's one thing my wife and I didn't let happen. We knew we didn't want to be outnumbered. So, well, they had twins. So anyway,
Brendan and Rendon had twins?
Brandon had
I was getting ready to say that I missed something because there was
one.
They only had 1.
And now they got 3.
Now they got 3?
Now they got 3.
Okay, I got to tell them congratulations. Slip that one past me.
Yeah, so anyway, the committee was back in James's control, and I was very active in national politics, and there were some unexpected outcomes in 2016 in our party. Party.
A few.
And so, rather than run for the chairmanship of the DC Party, which is what I really was planning to do, I just came home to Texas. Today was a little warm outside, and I thought, oh, I'm going to start sweating in my suit. I like it. I like hot weather. I just prefer hot weather. You can drink something cool, take off your jacket, find a shady spot. There are a lot of things you can do. If I were at Valley Forge, I would have been the first guy to die. I would have just said, I'm out. I'm not going to make it.
I know that's right. I know when I was coming out of college, it was said to me that I had a sufficient LSAT score and GPA to go to Harvard. And I told someone, I don't want to go to Harvard. It snows up there. I was trying to get away from snow.
One of the last trips I took to Boston, where I had not spent a bunch of time, I did marry a Harvard graduate, but our son went to school there at Northeastern, and I would take him up there and bring him back. And I got up there one time, one of his last years, and it was 2 winters ago. I guess it was 2015 winter. It snowed more than 100 inches in Boston. More than 100 inches.
That's too much.
They had to shut down the transportation system and, close school and it's one thing when that happens unexpectedly in some southern town, but this is a city that used to snow, but not that much.
Well, I lived and grew up in Lincoln Heights, which is outside Cincinnati, Ohio. And I really, in the north, in the wintertime, when you're walking down the street, you don't say hi. You don't take your hand out and say hi. You used to just like that.
Keep the hands
I think that's where they came from, because it's cold.
I went to a 4-day convention in Cincinnati, and it never got above 10 degrees. It went back down into the single digits every night I was there. I don't need that. I just don't need that.
When I first came to Texas to go to law school at SMU, I left Cincinnati, it was 80-something degrees. I landed at the Dallas airport, and the first time I saw something that had a temperature on it said 92 degrees at night.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how it get that hot in the sun's not even up? Come on.
Summer of 1980 was when it was over 100 degrees 30 days in a row in Dallas. I was living in Fort Worth, and if it hit 100 degrees by noon, it would hit 110 that day. And I've been walking around in that 110 degree weather, and I still, even that, I thought this is interesting. I'm okay with this. And if it got to be 110 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just what you're talking about, it'd be 10 p.m., stars and moon, no daylight left, no twilight, nothing like that. It's black outside and 100 degrees.
You mentioned something earlier that I'd like to pick up on. You mentioned about how challenging it is to be a conservative in Austin, let's say Travis County. I believe it's even more challenging if you happen to be black, which I happen to be. And if you're black and you're conservative and you say you're Republican, it's almost like it's a bad word. I was on a radio show of my buddy Ken Thompson. I was on the show. I was on his show one day. And while I was on the show, there was a lady who called in who said her son was a student at TCU, and he was expressing conservative ideas and looked like he was grasping them. And his mother thought he needed to see a psychiatrist.
Again, I do think that that's a conscious campaign on the part of the Democrats, not all liberals, but it's a political wedge that they've been very successful at. They get it across that Republicans are not reasonable. You can't deal with them. And so even a moderate Republican, you turn them into a demon. You demonize them, and you tell your supporters, young people, people of color, you tell them, boy, if you let these Republicans get in, they're going to turn back the clock to 1955. They're all a bunch of old white guys, and that's all they want to do is restore their own
Nikki
power.
Giovanni, as the archive read, he must have been in 16, she said, if Trump were elected, we were going back to slavery.
And people say that without being challenged.
And that's why I blame conservatives such as us for not opening our mouths.
Well, it's hard because, you know, the old joke is, when did you stop beating your wife? Because if you can get your opponent to spend 30 minutes saying, I have not hit my wife, I have not kicked my wife, I have not pushed her down in the mud. If you can get someone to talk about something and deny it, it ends up sticking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's embarrassing. I mean, they taunt us. The Democrats say, well, there was this sheriff in some town out west with 300 residents, and he said something horrible yesterday, and you guys didn't even speak out against it. Well, you know, the Republican Party gets about 10 seconds a day of news coverage. You're not going to come out and say, we're holding this press conference to criticize this one guy out there who said something stupid. You don't want to spend all of your time saying, hey, we're the Republicans and we like black people. I've got a friend here. I got this friend who's black. I can't be prejudiced, because you absolutely make a fool of yourself, and rightly so. That's not the way this is supposed to work. James, I would count as a great friend of mine, and one of the interesting things about James and race that most people couldn't know is that he grew up on the east side of Fort Worth. When he does outreach, it's not a stretch for him. He doesn't have to like look up in the book, like, okay, let's see, what can I say, what can I not say, you know, okay, don't say Negro anymore, okay. And then he goes over and talks to people. He doesn't need coaching. He doesn't need to try to relax. He doesn't need to do any of those things, because he is familiar with people from all kinds of different backgrounds. When he went to Stanford, he's comfortable in any room.
Well, I think, with all due respect to that, I just believe that conservatives in general have not done a good job at promoting themselves and promoting their ideas.
Well, it's pretty tough if you can't get a reporter to write a story. We don't get covered by the paper. The Statesman won't write about us. Now, the best thing that happened for publicity
Was Robert Morrow. Was Robert Morrow.
And that my personal opinion is that episode actually did more damage than some of the activists understand, because you know that Robert Morrow was not the typical Republican.
No.
You know that other members of our committee do not wear jester hats.
I got one. I got one.
You got one?
No, the reason I got one is because I plan on having it on the show at some point, and I'm having it just.
Well, the thing is, you know people who are on the committee who are serious, prominent people. You know, we've got leaders of the community, but Austin doesn't know that. If you Google Travis County Republican Party, that's all you see. Now, he as we said, Morrow did not serve as a leader of the party. He didn't even want to. He said it on the show.
Right.
I don't want to raise any money. He didn't want to do the job. But that's all that people know, is that he was the chairman. And so I think it did a lot of damage. I think that there are serious people, successful downtown, or let's say
who couldn't be associated with that.
Yeah, let's say they're serious people in some way. Principal of a high school. Why would a principal who needs to remain dignified in front of all of his faculty and all of his students, why would he join an organization that looks ridiculous? But let me say something about black Republicans, because I think that having spent a lot of time in D.C. and having really lived in an African-American community, my observation is that if you're in a sorority at SMU, it's not hard to be a Republican. You grew up in a Republican household, you're 19 years old now, nobody's ever said anything nice about Democrats, it's easy to be a Republican. If you go into a neighborhood where it's not okay to be a Republican, and someone says, yeah, I'm a Republican, that person, they've got battle scars. They spend every Thanksgiving, they spend every time there's, ice cream in the backyard, they have spent half their life saying, no, listen to me, you're wrong. This is not what you've been told about the Republican Party is inaccurate. And they have practiced, they are dug in. They are, if they could get tattoos that say GOP, they would do that because they really are committed, because it's just not easy. You legitimately have to find good arguments.
Well, as a person who's black, who's a Republican who happens to be black, it is quite challenging. I have a good friend here, and I consider him a good friend, Richard Franklin. I went to one of Richard. I took you to one of Richard's meetings. That's one of the first places I take you.
You did.
Took you.
You did.
Because when you got here, I took you on the route, and I think I took you, most places I took James also, like the Richards meeting, your favorite barbecue place.
I love Sam's. I go there a lot. If I'm downtown and I have time to go eat something, I'll go to Sam's on 12th.
But Richard, I went to one of the first meetings I went to of Richard's, and Richard knows my political affiliation. He said, I come walk in, he said, so, Mikey, I'm glad you're in town. Now people have somebody else to hate.
And see, that's what I'm talking about with the Democrats. And again, I'm not really talking about all liberals, because
It's not all of them, yes.
It's not all
It's good
liberals.
people. It's good people
there are very,
with different
very
ideas.
good, reasonable people who want everyone to get along. But if your job is to defeat the Republican Party, then you wake up in the morning and you say, what can we say bad about them today? And so you get this, not just if you're an African American, you get this if you're a young woman. What do you think happens when a young woman says, I'm a Republican? They say, how can you do that? How can you betray us? And so if they can make it unacceptable to be anything other than Gary, 59-year-old white guy, I'm the only kind of Republican there could be. Anybody else is crazy. Let me change the subject a little bit, because that's what Democrats try to do, is to make you feel stupid if you're a Republican. And one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard them talk about is this guy, Thomas Frank, who wrote a book, What's the Matter with Kansas? And it's a play on a historical thing. The matter with Kansas was the argument over whether they should have slavery there. But he meant, what's the matter with those stupid people? They're Republicans. And don't they understand that they're a bunch of middle class, lower class farmers? They're scraping together, household income, 35, 40 grand a year. Don't they understand that if they would just vote for Democrats, they'd get more aid? They're idiots. And you can find that in any paper, any day of the week. You can find some reference to the media or to the Democrats saying the Republicans are fooling poor people because poor people are voting against their own interests. And I say that's a stupid idea, because that is just an indication that they think that poor people are stupid. They think that poor people don't understand what's good for them, and so they're coming in like the nanny state, and they're telling poor people, we'll take care of you, we'll give you more aid. And sometimes poor people, they don't wake up in the morning and say, how much money can I get out of the government? That's not what they do. They say, how can I get out of poverty? How can I make sure that if my kids grow up and make some money, that they won't have to pay off a debt that I ran up? So I think that's hilarious to me, that Democrats constantly say, poor people who vote Republican are just idiots. They're just idiots, because they're not idiots.
Now, addressing what you just said, Gary, it's amazing to me that the black community can vote 90% for Democratic Party and, and believe that Democratic bullshit. If the government could make you prosperous, the urban areas would be the most thriving communities on the planet.
Yeah, and this war on poverty, maybe it was worth a try. Maybe as humans, maybe as earthlings, as Americans, maybe we needed to try this experiment where we would tax at a higher rate, like they do in Europe, and we would try to do something with spending. We'd spend our way into a world where nobody's poor. Maybe we had to try it, but we tried it. We've tried it, we've thoroughly tried it, it doesn't work.
One thing should be very clear to anyone with common sense is you can't spin your way to prosperity.
It's
There has to be work or production somewhere.
the thing that they like to accuse Republicans of is being, they say that all of conservative economics is based on greed, and they believe that every successful business got there by cheating poor people. I don't understand that. I don't understand why anyone thinks that the way to get rich is to cheat poor people, because they don't have money. You need to do something different. You need to persuade people to buy something that you've got. But they say it's all based on greed, and that's one of my favorite ways to tell the difference between an economic conservative and an economic liberal. Ask them, what should we do about poor people? It's my observation that a conservative Republican will give you some ideas. They'll say, we need to do better in the school systems, because you drive over to the nice section of town, same school system, not really the same environment, not the same education. So we need to do these things, like we need to make sure that we give today's poor kids an even chance of becoming prosperous people. And they can talk about what government's role ought to be, primarily education, I think. Ask a Democrat what we need to do about the poor. They can't even get through 3 sentences without saying the rich, because they believe that the answer is, if you just take a bunch of money away from some people and just give it to other people, that those other people somehow become prosperous. And I don't think it works. I think we tried it.
Well, I think Obama tried it with that stimulus. And I've asked this question on Facebook a number of times. Did anyone become rich and prosperous from the stimulus besides the banks? No.
It probably generated spending,
Right.
because they wanted people to spend some money, and that creates jobs, and a rich person isn't very likely to go to Best Buy. If they make an extra $10,000, they don't go to Best Buy and buy a $10,000 system. They invest it. That's how they got to be rich. They may not be nice people. They may be boring people. They may be people who are really not very well read, and they can't talk about anything and be interesting. What we know about people who are making a lot of money is they know how to make money. That's what they do. And so if you take $100,000 out of the hands of a self-interested person who has shown some talent for making money, and you give it to the government, it doesn't become more money. The government's job is not to invest that money. The government's job is to help people who need help. And I'm not against that. If someone can't eat in America, the government should give them food. I don't know if I've got some friends who are more conservative than me and say, man, you might as well join the Democratic Party. All I'm saying is, if government would restrict itself to just saving people's lives, which I think we need to do. I don't want to live in an America where you see kids who are hungry. But if they would just stop at that point, I think things would take care of themselves a lot faster.
I believe that. One that just simply needs to look at what I call the limousine liberals say, more government. People like Nancy Pelosi, many members of the Congressional Black Caucus, they're millionaires.
And this is something
I don't see them starting any businesses in the black community. I don't even see pictures of them in the black community.
No, I think that some, I'm going to try to give some of those people the benefit of the doubt. I believe that a lot of wealthy liberals, it's not all guilt. Some of it is. Some of it is, man, I can't believe I have all this money and other people don't, so I feel bad about that. So they want to pay higher taxes. But it's also generosity. It's also generosity. There are some very wealthy liberals who say, I got lucky. You know, I gave the right guy $10,000 when I was 26 years old, and he turned it into 10 million. And I just bought the right stock. I was in the right place at the right time. So I want to pay more. I say, that's great. That's great. That's wonderful that you are so generous. In fact, if you've still got money left over on April 15th, why don't you give the government another couple million bucks? You're always free to do that. If you believe that government is a good investment, give them more money. Like poor old Buffett. Warren Buffett's always complaining that his secretary pays more as a percentage than he does. Well, why? Why? He could turn over half the stock in his company to the government if he believes that that's the right investment. So I think that the thing that government should do is collect whatever amount of money it needs to do the things like build highways. Defense is really the one thing that the federal government sort of has to do. We don't want a Fort Worth submarine fleet and a separate, Florida invasion force. We need defense for the entire nation, and so there's waste in anything that big, but that's what we need to do.
I think one of the challenges that faces us as a nation, regardless of your political affiliation, is the lack of the quality in education. And I believe that now we're turning out children who really are not educated but indoctrinated.
Well, and a lot of conservatives, good friends of mine, react to that by saying, we need to pull the kids out, we'll do some homeschooling. They're just being indoctrinated. And one of the things that occurs to me as the son of two public school teachers, and in fact that's my grandparents. I'm from a family of teachers, so I'm a big disappointment to those people. But the teachers do indoctrinate children. I got indoctrinated, but I got indoctrinated with some really good ideas, I think. I grew up, learning about the founding fathers. I don't feel I was lied to, or I don't think that patriotism was a silly thing. I was given these values like self-reliance and some other things like that. So I sort of like the idea of public education. I like the idea of school choice as well, but I want every kid to have access to a free education, and I'm going to indoctrinate them. If I can, I'm going to indoctrinate them with ideas like, don't feel sorry for yourself. If you're really having a bad time, ask for help. You should do that. But don't look around for excuses for what's going wrong in your life. You may just have had some bad luck. Give them this value. Teach them in math class. Save 15% of everything you bring home. You're going to be comfortable when you're 65 years old. You're not going to even want Social Security. You're going to have money. And if we could just have people be more self-reliant, we could say, oh, you can spend it all. You can be like the grasshopper in the parable. But if you do that, you're going to have to live in government housing with some monthly government payments, eat government-provided food. It's not a beautiful life. It's not good.
Well, I believe that in many respects that views on life have been affected by what people have been hearing in the mainstream media. I believe people think that life is, you're supposed to be happy all the time.
And the government is what makes it happy. So if anything goes wrong, if you buy a house on the beach and the storm blows it away, it's not a problem. You pick up the phone and say, I lost my house. Please bring me another one. Yeah, please. And by the way, I don't want to spend the night in some shelter somewhere. I need a new house, like maybe Tuesday or something. I'll stay with my brother a couple of days.
It seems that they have too many citizens with the mindset that's like Burger King, have it your way.
And
as though you're in charge, like you're God.
And so you get into these kinds of conversations with like-minded people, and a Democrat who's listening is saying, see, they don't care about people who have had misfortune. That's not what I'm saying. If someone loses their home and they can't feed their children, I want them to seek out help. And I would even agree that whereas the best help comes from private citizens in their neighborhood, there should be a safety net, because the patchwork of local community organizations is uneven. You can't get it to balance out. And so there has to be somebody to help the person who doesn't have friends. People who have friends, they've got it pretty good. They can call and say, can we sleep in your attic for a couple of months? And people say, sure. And that's the way to handle those things. But if somebody doesn't have a friend, I want government to save those people's lives, and I want government to be there primarily to educate people, indoctrinate them with values that work for them and their family, that work, make them prosperous.
I'd like to interrupt you there, Gary. I would say values that work, period, because
values that work.
One thing is that we should know by now, given the experience of the last 55 to 60 years, we know that the ideas of liberalism just don't work. They haven't worked. It's really just disguised socialism,
well,
which hasn't worked at any time in history.
It's socialism light, and the more you drift in that direction, the worse it is. I mean, we see that you can build this community in a place like Cuba, that I understand that they don't have constant wars or anything. They have a little community of Cubans, and they're proud that they're Cubans and all that. They're dirt poor. They are dirt poor. Their cars are all 1955 models.
They're trying to swim to Florida.
There is a reason that those fences and borders are guarded in a certain direction. We don't have a huge problem with people trying to sneak out of the United States.
Nobody's leaving. Even the people from Hollywood aren't leaving.
No, the people threaten to leave and then they don't end up. Another thing that I've been thinking about on the broad spectrum of
you mean you like me? You're still waiting for Cher to leave the planet?
Yes,
me too.
She doesn't like it. Is the difference between rationality and just sort of gut feelings. And I get really frustrated and irritated when Democrats say that we don't believe in science or something like that. Seems to me that the liberal attitude toward nuclear power, which is clean power by comparison with so many other things, they think that nuclear power is like vampires or something. They are so scared of it, they don't know what to do. And so, people can be irrational. I get that. Conservatives can be irrational, liberals can be irrational. They look at the facts, how many people have been killed in nuclear accidents, how much power has been generated for the dollar. It's expensive because we have overregulated it. But anyway, I was really trying to talk about emotions. I believe that there are times when a situation pulls at our heart. And a good example is these gun murders, a church just down the road, or a high school in Florida. And human beings, all of us, conservatives and liberals, we say, this can't happen again. What can we do? Let's do something. We get sort of emotional about it. We say, I don't care. I'll double my taxes. Take away all my neighbors' guns if it'll help. But that's the thing. That's the thing. It's not going to help. And if you are a rational human being, you can sit there and say, yeah, this is very troubling. This is very troubling that someone has the technology to kill 30 people in an hour. But that was against the law when they did that. We passed a law. It's against the law for them to kill people. So there's not another law you can pass that's going to cause them to wake up and say, I'm going to go kill some people today. And then they say, oh crap, they've passed a new law. Here in the paper, I see I can't go kill these people today. So people, their mental health problems, but none of this common sense legislation to control guns. What does that mean? What is it? You want to take away the guns of everyone who's going to commit a crime, but don't take away the guns of people who aren't going to commit a crime. How do you do that? There isn't a way. You have to use your head at some point and say, rationally, the facts are, I can't think of a way to stop some crazy guy from killing some kids next month. It's going to happen. And they say, well, you don't care about them. You don't care about children. That's not the case. They're emotionally upset and they want to do something. Government should do something.
Gary, excuse me. I was at the Juneteenth booth here in Travis County about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I observed a guy walk by the booth and he had a t-shirt on and said, what part of well-regulated don't you understand?
I've seen that shirt.
Now, I think to try to regulate every aspect of every human life in a city is insane.
Well, we do it more in cities.
They want to regulate your thinking, what you do, what you think, what you say. And so I've kind of come to some conclusions about liberalism generally. They seem to be anti-Christian, anti-freedom, and anti-common sense.
Yeah, and the freedom thing is really mysterious because in a lot of ways we sometimes associate social conservatism with lack of freedom, really. We have rules, and we've developed these rules over a period of thousands of years, and where they're taught to us by our parents, by our community, by our church, and we don't break those rules. Uh-huh. And sometimes we associate the opposite idea. Freedom on the social liberal side is, oh, there's a rule, we can't do this? Oh, let's do it anyway and see what happens. Let's just see what happens. And to some extent, that kind of thirst for change, it does bring progress sometimes. They think that it brings all progress. Progressives think that that's what it means. But I don't believe that conservatives today value things that were bad from the past. But we take something like say 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. There were a lot of white people saying, that's not the way we do it. We're not going to break the rules. You guys sit in the back. And it was liberalism, a desire to change that pushed us into a better world. But the problem is that if you let the liberals go, they'll just keep breaking rules. They'll just keep breaking rules, and because they want complete freedom. I think people try to make a difference between freedom and liberty. They say liberty is what we want. I don't know that the two words really mean anything different, but we want to be responsible.
It seems to me, Gary, that there are those who believe that a society should accommodate every idiosyncrasy that might exist among humans, and I don't think that that's really humanly possible.
Well, there
are too many variations among people,
and it's a competing value that we have on the right, because there are the more libertarian points of view that say, look, you're an individual. I don't want the police to come and arrest you for doing something in your home that I disagree with, because you have this freedom. But like you say, the other point of view is, yeah, but we have laws that, just because a cat is your cat doesn't mean you can kill your cat. We have laws that regulate morality. I hate it when people say we don't legislate morality. We don't want laws.
We do it all the time.
We don't kill people. We don't kill people because we think it's wrong. And so you definitely, there's a law against that. And liberals, I don't meet too many of them. Pro-choice liberals are not really very big on killing infants because they're making too much noise. They're against that. They say, you can't just kill your kid because he's complaining too much. So they legislate that too. They agree. We're in agreement on that. They have the point of view that before the child's born, it's not a child at all. But the point is that is an example of legislating morality. We do legislate morality, and we pass laws to keep people from causing our society to just break down into complete chaos.
We have to make choices based on our values.
Right.
I mean, that's what happens. Yet I hear some so-called liberals say it's almost as though they want no rules at all.
Yeah, and you know, you think of when we were young kids, neither one of us was old enough to dodge the Vietnam draft and grow our hair down to, I guess yours would have been up here like this. Mine was down below my shoulders. My hair was below my shoulders, but yeah, I wasn't old enough to say, oh, you know, drug laws, I don't recognize them. Like marriage, I don't recognize that either. You know, I'm just going to make up. I will wake up tomorrow morning and say, what would I like to do? I think I'd like to shoot up some heroin and then like experiment with something. Yeah, so you know, that doesn't lead to stability. I wanted to say one more thing about this emotional stuff. Another good example of this is I hear liberals saying, your laws against illegal immigration are scaring people. We've got good citizens, Hispanic citizens here in Austin, and they're afraid. They're afraid because you're always talking about deporting people. And my question to them is, have any of them been deported? Is there a fact that you want to come to me with? Or are you saying that you Democrats go up and down the street saying, Trump's going to come by and he's going to deport all of you. If you got dark skin, he's going to deport all of you. And they come running out saying, I'm worried about that. We say, see, it was his policies that worries these people. So it's an emotional appeal again. It's not a factual appeal. If somebody wants to deport an American citizen, I have a problem with that. Somebody better let me know. I do not want that to happen. It should not happen.
That's not the purpose. It's not the goal.
It's not what we want to do. So, you know, this is just like if one of us came over to the other person's house and just open up a Dr. Pepper and just talk about anything you want to. So I hope your viewers don't mind. There's just a couple of guys talking.
Got to wind up here, Gary. What's going on that's good with the Travis County Republican Party you can tell me about in about a minute and a half?
Well, we have a convention coming up in San Antonio. I would just invite people to come to one of our meetings. It's the third Tuesday of each month, so not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. Come to one of our meetings. If someone says to you, oh, the Republicans around here are crazy because they wear these jester hats, come and look. We don't do that. If they say, oh, it's just a bunch of old white guys, come and look. Come and look for yourself. If they say, oh, they hate Muslims, come and look for yourself.
Okay, Gary, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. And I got to get you back again so we can finish our talk.
Well, we'll never finish it. We'll never finish it. We'll just work on it. Well, that's great. Thank you for posting that. I didn't know that you were going to post that. That's a good producer when I say state convention and boom, it's there on the screen.